Welcome back to Jesus Loving Logger. We're going to talk about some more prophecy today. In the last prophecy update I was trying to stick to fulfilled prophecies, and I got into a little more future prophecies too. Sometimes prophecies have a little of both in them, future and past. And I was trying to mostly feed a bunch of fulfilled prophecy like out of a fire hose, not going too deep into any one of them. Although you can go deep into a lot of them. And today I want to go kind of deep into one of them. The first one I want to talk about is Israel 1948 rebirth. I talked a little bit about it last time. The Bible has a lot to say about it, but this is just a really cool group of prophecies, actually. Sometimes a group of prophecies will come together to make one bigger fulfillment, and that's an example of what I'm going to show you today. I've told you some prophecies about how Israel would become a nation again, when way back then nobody thought Israel would ever be a nation again, and now it obviously is. Well, there's a man by the name of Sir Robert Anderson, and he does a whole bunch of math on prophecies in the Bible, and he comes to the exact date that Israel became a nation again. So I'm going to share that with you today. I'm not gonna go into quite as much math as he did, because it's pretty intense trying to figure out the leap years and 11-minute longer years that one calendar had versus another, and then realizing another calendar was wrong. Well, when they bring all the calendars and leap years and times together, he does all the math on that, and you can look that up if you want. He documents it all, but I'll just kind of give you the general idea of it. Okay, so it starts with a prophecy in Ezekiel. God tells Ezekiel, lay on your side for 430 days. Each day will represent a year of judgment for the nation. And they were being judged because they had murder and idolatry going on, and later in Acts in the New Testament 7:52, it talks about the murders of God's prophets. And so we know that was part of it too. God would send prophets to try to tell the people, you guys are going outside of my boundaries, don't do that. And they would get mad at the prophet and kill him. And then all the idols that they worshipped, and they were just starting to be an ungodly nation, and God had chose them to be his godly nation set apart. So he warned them. He sent prophets to warn them. They killed the prophets. So he's like, 430 years, I'm going to judge you. So anyway, the judgment starts with the 70 years that we already talked about last time in Babylonian captivity. So that gets rid of 70 years of the 430, and that was them in captivity for part of the judgment. And the other part of the judgment is going to deal more with them being scattered and losing their land, which Deuteronomy 30 verse 3, Jeremiah 9 verse 16, 1 Kings 14:15 are just some examples that God says he'll scatter them from their nation into other Gentile nations if they keep it up. So, and he did that at the Tower of Babel too earlier on in Genesis. They all came together in rebellion against him, and he just scattered them all over the world and gave them different languages. Okay, so 70 of the years are fulfilled. That leaves 360 years. Well, another prophecy in Leviticus 26:18 comes into play with these 360 years. God says, if you don't listen to my voice, I'm going to get angry, and I'm going to multiply your judgments 7 times over. So they got 360 years left. They won't listen to God. They keep rebelling. So the 360 years, if you multiply it into the Leviticus 26:18 prophecy of God prophesies he'll do to them, you get 2,520 years. Now is when you have to convert all the math I was telling you about, the leap years and the 11.5 minutes and all that, into a different calendar system. But we'll just spare the details right now. You can look them up if you're interested. But what we do is we come up with 906,295 days, and then we put that back into our calendar system that we have today, and it comes out to be, because they had 360-day years and we don't, it comes out to 2,483 years, 9 months, and 21 days in our calendar system. And so if we know the first 70 years in Babylon ended, we know by history, in our calendar system on July 23rd, 537 BC. So there's 70 years is done, and then you tack on this extra 2,483 years, 9 months, 21 days. After that, like going right after the decree of Cyrus to let them go after their 70 years, it was 70 years of captivity down to the day, because that's what God said it was going to be. And that's, I told you last video that Daniel prayed and said, hey, our 70 years is coming up. And that's when the angel Gabriel come and talked to him. Well, 70 years to the day, they were freed to go rebuild their temple. Cyrus gave the decree. And if you start from that time, you add, if you add these years, you come to the day May 14th, 1948, and this is the exact date that Israel became a nation again. So this is just amazing. And he also uses this time frame because there's two different decrees that went out. One was to rebuild the temple, one was to rebuild the city, and the city as well, and that was Artaxerxes, and that was a later decree. But if you add this timeline on to the third siege of Jerusalem, and they also had a 70-year time frame. If you tack it on to the end of that, you come up with June 17th, 1967, and that's when Israel won their 6-day war and they regained Jerusalem in the territory. So anyway, that's pretty amazing that the actual day that they would become a nation again was prophesied. If you just knew enough of your Bible verses and what God threatened to do to them if they didn't listen, and the fact they didn't listen, and the captivity that they had, and the judgment that they had left. So that was judgment that they had left, not that they would have to be in captivity that whole time, because they were only in captivity for the 70 years. Well, I guess they were in captivity a couple times throughout time, but they didn't have their nation anymore. That was the big judgment, that they were being judged, being without a nation, and God told them in all those other verses that they would be scattered among Gentile nations, and that was. But now after 1948, they're all coming back to their homeland, and it's never happened to a nation before that they would get their language and their nation back, and they would all come back to it after it was taken over. So that's pretty awesome. Okay, so I just mentioned the 1967 war. In 1948, they got their nation back, but they only got half of Jerusalem, just a little portion of Jerusalem, and they didn't get very much area. And all their neighbors were furious about it because they were Muslim Palestinians, and just all their neighbors have pretty much always hated them. So, or they pretty much hate them in that time frame. Anyway, when they were given back this piece of Jerusalem, the neighbors got angry about it, and in 1967 they decided they were going to wipe Israel out. Well, their neighbors were way more powerful than them, and there was more of them. They should have probably succeeded, but God didn't allow it, because God's will be done, not theirs. God decided that they were going to expand their territory instead of getting taken over. So they fought in this 1967 war, the 6-Day War as it's called, and they actually got all of Jerusalem back because they were defending themselves. They didn't go on a offensive strike. They were just defending themselves against all these people coming against them, and they defeated them. Well, during the defeat, they regained Jerusalem, all of Jerusalem, and more area all around them. They expanded their territory quite a bit during that war. And anyway, they own the Temple Mount site where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is, and the Dome of the Rock that the Muslims control, and they're not allowed to build their temple there yet. Well, that's really important to them. But in 1967, when they took over the area, they realized that they could probably be fairly peaceful if they didn't do anything with the Temple Mount. So they put an organization from Jordan in control. They're Palestinians, and they're called the Wafd. And they're in control of the site that Jerusalem really wants, and they actually own it. They own it. It's theirs, but they know when they take control of it, there's going to be a big fight for it. So in 1967, they didn't think they were ready for that fight, so they allowed the Muslims to control that site and trying to live in peace with them there. Well, it hasn't been very peaceful. The Jews and Christians are not allowed to even pray on the site. The Wafd enforces rules, making sure that they can't go up there and pray. They can't sacrifice. They're only allowed there at certain times. And anyway, it's pretty one-sided that the Jews aren't really allowed to do much there. And the Jews want the site where the Dome of the Rock sits, the one with the big gold cap on it. And that's actually not the most important part to the Muslims. That's just where they think Muhammad ascended into heaven. So they built that Dome of the Rock there. It's built on the most holy site that Jerusalem needs to put the temple over, where the Holy of Holies is going to be, because it's the most holy site in the world. And actually just to the south is more important to the Muslim people because it's where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is, and it's the third most holy site to the Muslim people after Mecca and Medina. So anyway, knowing all that Jerusalem actually has control whenever they want to, it's just going to be a fight when they do it. And they've allowed the Wafd to be in control, but they want their site back. And in the last video, I told you about the red heifers they're getting prepared, and the railway system they're building to the temple that's not there yet. They're really wanting this temple. Okay, so there was a proposal just last week, I think it was, from the Likud lawmaker, Ami Halevi. And he's in Benjamin Netanyahu's, which is the prime minister, on and off quite a few times in the last couple of years. But anyway, he's the prime minister of Israel, and it's part of his group. They have something, and it's just a proposal right now, so don't take it as I'm saying this is going to happen, but they did make this proposal. It shows you where their mindset is. They want to take the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the south end of this holy temple site. It's a 37-acre area, so they want to divide it in half, give the south part to the Muslims, because that's where their Al-Aqsa Mosque is. That's the important one I told you. And then the Dome of the Rock, which is more of a monument to where they think Muhammad ascended to heaven. It's not quite as holy to them, but it's still pretty important. It's still going to cause a fight if they do it. But the Jews want the north end, where that is, where that gold domed building is, in the center of this area. And then they can build their temple there. And then they could go worship on their temple. The Wafd, the Jordanian Muslim authorities, wouldn't have any authority on the northern half, just the southern half where the Muslims would be. Well, the Muslims aren't going to go for this. It's going to be a fight, but they're trying to figure out how they can split it and make things work for everybody, but not going to happen, I don't think. So anyway, it's what they're proposing right now. And just the fact that they're trying to do that, because the Bible says that they will have control of the temple again before the end time starts, before the last days. They're going to control that area. So you just see the push for it right now. And that's something in the news right now. I thought that was pretty cool to share. And one last thing I wanted to share prophetically. I was listening to a Jewish Messianic rabbi. Messianic rabbi means that he's Jewish and he was a rabbi, but he believes in Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. So he's a Messianic rabbi now. And his name is Rabbi Jason Sobel. And he said that he used to not believe in Jesus, but he said when you're talking to a Jewish person, if you try to help them out with Isaiah 53, tell them to read a New Testament, which they're not going to do willingly, but if they will, and then they read Isaiah 53 and they see the similarities, all the proof of how Jesus fulfilled Isaiah 53. I mean, it's just amazing. You should definitely just go read Isaiah 53. Like everything you read, you're gonna say, this sounds. That's what he said. He said he thought it was actually a New Testament writing because he'd never studied Isaiah 53 much. There's certain things that they kind of shy away from. I think Isaiah 53 is one of them. They consider the suffering servant all of Israel, not just Jesus. But he said, once you read what happened to Jesus and you read Isaiah 53, there can be no coincidence. It has to be right. Well, he said all of a sudden after he read the New Testament, so many things came to his mind prophetically, and he considers these prophetically. Adam and Eve stole from a tree, so Jesus had to pay by dying on a cross, which symbolized a tree. So it also said in the Bible somewhere that cursed is the man who hangs on a tree, but because Adam and Eve were cursed, Jesus had to be cursed to take over their curse, basically. And he had to do it on wood, which symbolized the tree. His hands were pierced because Adam and Eve's hands stole the apple, so his hands had to be pierced. His side was pierced because the woman in the sin came from Adam's side. The feet were pierced because it fulfilled the first messianic prophecy in Genesis of the serpent bruising his feet. The crown of thorns was prophetic because earth was cursed with weeds and thorns. And it represented that he was taking on the curse of the creation as well by taking on the thorns. Because thorns were cursed to the creation, or because for man, because man's going to have to deal with weeds from now on. And I know that because I've been digging a lot of thistles up. Man, those things grow really good. But anyway, so these are just some examples of what a messianic Jewish person believes are fulfilled prophecies when he starts looking into this stuff. I just thought that was pretty cool to share. I never heard it from a rabbi's point of view, but all right, well, that's all I have for you in this one. I guess I do have one other thing I wanted to share, and it goes along with my science proof, but I just heard this prophecy. Actually, I've heard it before, but I just remembered it, and I already finished my science section, so maybe I'll add one scientific prophecy, or not a prophecy, just a scientific proof for the existence of God, and it has to do with DNA. So, I'm sorry, this is a hand-drawn picture. It's not super professional, but you'll get the gist of it from it. So, you have to know about a Hebrew letter system. Hebrew letters also went along with numbers and pictures. And it's called gematria or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, all Hebrew numbers are associated with a letter. So if you look at a DNA strand of a human, every DNA strand of a human has the same amount of spacing between the double helixes. The the little ladder rungs, so to speak, on the double helix. The first one starts out with 10 segments of space. The next one has 5 segments of space. The next one has 6. The next one has 5. And then it starts all over. It goes 10, 5, 6, 5, 10, 5, 6, 5. So the fact that they're always the same, 10, 5, 6, 5, if you take the letters that are associated with the numbers 10, 5, 6, 5, the letters for 10 is Y, 5 is H, and 6 is W. And they didn't, I think they didn't have vowels, they only had consonants. So they spelt God's name in Hebrew as YHWH. And if you look, number 10 is Y, 5 is H, 6 is W, and 5 again is H. YHWH is, if you use the Hebrew letter number system, every strand of DNA spells God's name in it. So that's pretty cool. And I wanted to share that. It's not really I shouldn't really share it in the prophecy section here, but I already finished my science, so I just wanted to share that with you because I think that's really cool. And I'm glad that you guys came to watch again. I look forward to you guys watching another one soon. Have a great day. Thank you for visiting.